Right.
Hey, what time is it over there, Robert?
8 a.m.
All right. Well, appreciate you getting up early on the program to do this Edge program. Have you seen any of our shows, Robert?
Yes, I have, Daniel.
All right. Well, some of it's tongue in cheek, and that's okay. We lighten the mood a little bit, but we're going to be talking about some awesome topics tonight. I've listened to a lot of your podcasts and interviews, and man, you've done some awesome research. And looks like I've read one place that said in 57 years you've gone to 58 countries in your research. Man, how is that? What? Hey, man, how can I take your life from you and live it for you just to make sure?
Well, I mean. It's a strange path I'm on. There's 200 countries on the planet, so I've really only seen about a quarter of it so far. Mm-hmm. And I'm 50. God, really? Am I 58 now? Yeah. No, coming up on 58 this year. So yeah, mm-hmm. I guess it's time to start traveling some more.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to be having some pictures in our background concerning our topics tonight about the archons, ancient history, and even the Matrix as far as that goes. But
right.
let's rewind your history a little bit for the audience here, Robert.
Sure.
How did you get involved in even studying, having a desire to look into ancient mysteries and even extraterrestrials, if that's an appropriate word for some people? It's it's a bad word. Who knows? But how did you get in your what spurred you to research what you do?
Well, I guess in a way you could say I was thrown in the deep end of the demon pool back in September 21st, 1985, while I was working security at the beach in Malibu where I grew up. It was. I know a lot of people heard me tell this story, so I'm not going to go over the whole thing. I'm just going to summarize that. I was helping a family that was in distress, and in the process is when I started getting attacked by these parasitic demonic entities that were attacking the family. So, I mean, it kind of makes sense looking back on it all. At the time, though, it really didn't make any sense whatsoever. And that was the motivation for me to try and figure out what was going on, because I guess my paradigm had been shattered, sort of like an alarm clock, that the archons set off my alarm, mm-hmm. and so much so that I realized, wait a second, there is whatever we've been told about reality, it isn't accurate. Okay, so then I'm on a quest for, it's been like over 30 years now, trying to get a handle on what is the truth, and so finding those answers out was it's been really tough, because there's a lot of people that claim they know, but most of the stuff we discuss in this field of paranormal, etc., is speculation presented as fact, and that doesn't really help. Mm-hmm. And if you may have noticed that most everybody seems to disagree on what it is. Mm-hmm. So, right. So there's no consensus, and there doesn't seem to be any concern, generally speaking, on how to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. So, in your worldwide travels, do you go to each place to try to find out the answers to say what attacked you or what truth is? What is your motivation for your research?
Well, my travels started when I was 12 years old, and it was because I was with my parents. I was always an inquisitive person, and for some reason my life path took me to, with my parents as a youth, and that's actually motivated me to want to know more, because visiting places like the Great Pyramid and the Parthenon and Stonehenge, etc., I looked at those things and I was fascinated by them, and I wanted to know more, but as I read about them, I felt like something was just missing. Like, people say that, like, again, most of it seemed like speculation. I had an out-of-body experience in the Great Pyramid at the King's Chamber, quite by accident again, or it sure felt like it, and that was 1975. And that was the end of my journeys as a teenager. But that was the longest trip ever. I was on a cruise ship with my parents. We went from Los Angeles all the way to Alexandria, Egypt, and then hired a car and drove over not far from Alexandria, past Cairo to the Giza Plateau, and I wanted to go in there. I was curious, right? And my parents and my sister, they stayed outside. They refused to go in, which I'm like, all right, whatever. I'll be right back. Well, I don't know how much time went by, but they said, my dad told me, he said, when you came out of there, you looked pretty freaked out. And I was, but, yeah, it's kind of been the way my life has unfolded. The trajectory, when I look at it, seems pretty odd. But apparently, I must have agreed to that coming in, that I needed that in order to motivate me to try and figure some things out and ultimately share that, whatever I've learned with others.
Mm-hmm. When you say you're attacked, was that the Archons?
Well, that's what the Gnostics called them. Christians called them demons.
Mm-hmm. And how did they attack you, Robert? I mean, physically, mentally, spiritually?
It's a combo. Yeah, it's combo. Like, so when I first saw them, when I was giving assistance to this family, this little boy was bleeding to death, and I was in there helping them. And as I was talking to his grandmother, I realized instinctively, somehow intuitively, my internal dialogue said, this boy is hearing voices. Now, I was 25 at the time. I didn't know anything about possession or schizophrenia. I think those two are very much the same side of one coin. I mean, it's two sides of the same coin. Sorry, it's kind of early here. My brain is not fully awake yet. So as I'm having this kind of internal dialogue or realization, the boy's hearing voices telling him he could fly, and this is why he was – I mean, that's the way they were motivating him or manipulating him into hurting himself, so that they could feed off of that negative energy. Very traumatic, obviously. He was bleeding to death. So in a way, it was a blood sacrifice without the ritual. Mm-hmm. And so as I had that realization, I saw suddenly it's like these black parasite-looking things just manifested up in the room, up near the ceiling, and I looked at them, and honestly, the first thing I thought was, man, those things look like ticks, but they were bigger, like the size of your fist, and there must have been, I don't know, maybe 10, maybe a dozen, but they were like in a swarm, and I looked at that and I thought, wow, and then because I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. I didn't know how that was even possible. Something could just manifest in the room like that out of thin air, right? Mm-hmm. And as I was watching it vanished the same way it appeared. It just kind of phased in and phased out. It took a couple seconds. It was there. It was long enough for me to get a really good look at it, or them, and I wanted to believe that I was just hallucinating because of the trauma that was going on around me, blood and people freaking out, and it was pretty traumatic. But I really think that those things were having a feeding frenzy, and that's one aspect of the Archons. At least that's the way the Gnostics describe them, as they look like a fetus. And I actually found pictures of that many years later. I think it was 2011 that I actually wrote the first article, and it includes pictures that were taken, again, quite accidentally, by somebody named Trevor James Constable. And he was in California in the deserts, and he was using infrared film, and he was capturing things that he called sky critters. And so, and he didn't know what they were. And I'd seen them before, but like I said, this has taken, relatively speaking, for me, it's taken a long time to even put the pieces together. But when they attacked me that day on the beach, after I left the house, after the boy left in the ambulance, I went back to doing what I was supposed to do, which was being security guard, patrolling the beach for people that are trespassing on the private property. So I felt like my life force was being drained out of me through my solar plexus. And again, at first I thought that I was just traumatized. Mm-hmm. When some people see that much blood, they faint, right? Mm-hmm. So I thought maybe I'm just feeling nauseous from all this stuff, but it didn't pass like that, and it wasn't like any kind of nausea I'd ever felt in my life. And Go ahead.
Well, Robert, let me ask you something. When you were depicting the things attacking you, two visions came into my mind. One was a scene from the Scorpion King, I think, with a rock, where you know the scene I'm talking about, where these things are coming out of the desert, just swarms of them.
Yeah.
So it's either that or it's the Langoliers with Stephen King, the little crunchy things flying around, eating things. So which one of those is more probably true to what you saw?
Neither. Okay, they're insect-like, but they're not any kind of physical. They don't look. Like I said, the closest thing that my mind went to was ticks, but they actually look exactly like amoeba, which technically is a parasite. So they are not, but they're not physical, and yet they can affect us physically, emotionally, spiritually. It's really interesting.
You said they also look like fetuses. What?
Well, that's what the Gnostics. That was a pretty weak example. They didn't know how to describe it to people, other than they said some of them were reptilian, some of them look like fetuses. Some people have interpreted that to mean they look like the gray aliens, but that's not it. It's not it at all. I mean, and what I've found over time doing this research is that there's a lot of, pretty much every culture has names for these things. And it isn't just the mental. Okay, so these little relatively small, amoeba-looking parasites are relatively roundish, right?
Okay.
And they have like a hole in the center. I think that's where they absorb the energy, the negative energy that they need. But what they are really is a thought form. Pretty much everything in reality is, but and they were created inadvertently. From what I understand now, many years later, was that these things were created by Lucifer when he was driven insane, he and his crew. So I do think there's a lot of accidental stuff that has happened. I'm not sure exactly, when or where. I mean, I've got a lot of clues. I mean, I've written 3 articles about this, and it's on my website for free in the articles section. So you can kind of take a look at the pictures that I've put together that I feel represent these parasites. But then you got to understand that they work for or are part of the Archon agenda or hierarchy. And Lucifer would be at the top of that pyramid hierarchy. So his empire is something that we all exist in. Most of us don't know that, unfortunately. But the people that run this world do. I mean, and that's why they're rewarded for their behavior and by supporting his kingdom.
I know you're in Hong Kong, but I know you can probably see afar what's happening in the United States.
Yes,
anger and hate on a scale that nobody's ever seen in this country. Is this something that Lucifer and his posse are enjoying? Are they behind it, working both sides against the middle? I mean, how do you see it in relation to your research?
You're absolutely correct. I mean, and it's not new. He does this. First, he'll build up a nation, and then he breaks it down. I mean, essentially, to them, we are like cattle. So you raise a herd, and then you cull the herd. And that's what they do with us, and have been since, from Christian perspective, it would be since the Garden of Eden.
All right. We have a question come out of the live chat from Kentucky Girl. She says, in general, what do you have a singular thrust of your research, or do you just research all fields? What would you say is your main thrust of research?
It's holistic. I take a very holistic view. I don't reject anything out of hand, but then again, I don't accept anything simply on face value. I'm doing a comparative analysis of all the information that is available to me. I've been able to access information that is beyond the scope of most researchers, and I believe that's because I'm being assisted by divine beings. They want us to know what's going on here so we can make a more well-informed decision or decisions about how we go forward. Because some of us have been here for far too long, and we don't like it, and we want we want to know what's going on. And I think ultimately a lot of us are going to leave this place at some point.
Oh, by the way, that was King's daughter that asked that question. I'm sorry, I got that confused there. All right,
Okay.
Here's a quick question because we have what's going on. Robert, there's a live chat going
Sure.
on now, and people are putting questions in there, and some people are using our Fast Blast email client to send questions in as well. And in fact, let me go over here to our Fast Blast. This is from Canada. It says. Star Wars, is that a Hollywood version of our ancient past? And if so, who gave him that information?
Well, geez, Hollywood is predictive programming, is what they're calling it now. Okay, so I grew up in Malibu, and that's where after I was attacked by those parasites, I went up on a mountain in Malibu, which is essentially the sister city of Hollywood. Mm-hmm. As soon as Hollywood was founded, those people started moving to Malibu and taking it over, and it became their sort of like their retreat. But here's what you got to know. That is a stronghold of Lucifer, and that's where I met him that night.
Whoa.
After I was being attacked, I went up on the mountain, and I was praying, and I was asking for assistance, and ended up having an out-of-body experience, and he confronted me. Now, I didn't know it at the time. He presented himself, looked like Jesus, and he was radiating this incredible light. And he said to me, I am the Father. So, I mean, what would you think? All right. But he did that to me. He was confronting me. He wasn't there to comfort me or assist me. He was there to utterly confuse me and control me. And so it was only with the help of what I consider to be the rest of our family, the other side of the family tree. They've been guiding and assisting me in a way that, well, if they hadn't been, I wouldn't be here talking to you right now. Okay, on multiple levels, none of this would have made sense, and I would have just given up. So, but anyway, Malibu. All right. So the people in Malibu are mostly from Hollywood, writers, producers, actors. That's where they go. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the stuff that's going on there they're being heavily influenced. If not, I think most of them are infected by the parasites, and they're affected by the Luciferian agenda. Hollywood plays a huge role in shaping like mind control. Essentially, we think it's entertainment, but come on, it's in television. It's called programming for a reason. Mm-hmm. It definitely shapes our perspective on life. So to answer your question, Star Wars and everything else that comes out of Hollywood is more about controlling our consciousness than it is entertainment.
Mm-hmm. Somebody asked the question: Is a thought form a tulpa? TULPA?
Yes. That's what the Tibetans call it. Mm-hmm. That they create a tulpa, a thought form that would supposedly defend them or attack their enemies. So it's just one example. In reality, we talk about consciousness. It's a wave. It's a bunch of waves that are being generated. It's not coming from our brain. It's coming from our soul, as far as I can tell. But in any case, we are projecting waves of consciousness. They call it brain waves for a reason. So everything is waves, including consciousness, energy, and matter are all waveforms. Mm-hmm. And so what we think of as physical matter is really not. When you break it down at its core, it's really just energy waves that have gone into spiral patterns. Those patterns then interact with one another to create all what we think of the platonic solids are really just energy patterns. You can see this very clearly in the science of cymatics. It's spelled with a C, Cymatics, I believe. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in other words, you play a frequency through a speaker, and you get, so you put paper with sand over a speaker, and you play different frequencies, and you can see the patterning that is occurring. Well, that's really what everything around us is. And to some extent, that's even, on a soul level. There's a certain frequencies and patterns to our soul. Mm-hmm. But it is also, I believe, that's pure consciousness, and that's where our spirit is really what's generating these waves. Not just our spirit, but, there's billions of us here now, but there's even more than that throughout creation. Mm-hmm. I mean, who knows how many souls or spirits there are, right, generating waves like that.
Are those also known as scalar waves?
Scalar wave is a time reversed conjugate waveform.
Okay, I like the sound of that.
I studied that years ago. So imagine it this way: if you so when the waves go into a spiral form to create what we think of as atomic structure, it's either spiraling in or spiraling out. With a scalar wave, it's spiraling both directions at the same time. It's very powerful, and it does open up the doorways between dimensions at the right frequency.
Wow. What is on the other sides of those doorways?
Okay.
Dare I ask?
No, it's a good question. You're asking some very good questions. The rest of creation. Okay, because where we are is rather isolated. Each dimension or density is separated, and yet it's connected. A good analogy, or the best one I can think of at this time, is the way the ocean is. So at the surface, right, it's warm, there's light, and it's one level of density.
Okay.
As you go down another 100 feet, there's less light, and the pressure starts to get greater. Go down another mile, and it's a whole nother ballgame, right?
Okay.
But yet but the ocean is all connected, right? But there's layers. There's layers. In music, we call these octaves, the waveforms in octaves. And each octave is a very different vibratory rate or patterning. And that's really what we're talking about here. They're closely connected, but there is a barrier or boundary layer between each octave or series of octaves that we might call a dimension or a density.
Okay, all right, we've got a number of questions coming, so let's go to those. First one, this is from our live chat. It says, why do demons, archons, aliens all seem to hate us? Now, there are those that say they hate us, and there are some that say they're here to help. I don't know. I think the jury's still out. What's your take on that, Robert?
Why do they hate us? Well, because they're stuck here in this matrix, and we're not. We're not even from here. Those of us who are souls here, we come here to experience things that don't exist outside this matrix. And on some level, I guess you could say they're jealous. They hate the fact that they're stuck here in this mess, and because they don't have a plan B.
Wow.
Right? It's very frustrating, I'm sure, for them. Even for Lucifer, I mean, even though he created this matrix and administrates it, he's stuck here. He can't go back to the more utopian, idyllic, heavenly, divine home where he came from.
That right there, Robert, reminds me of Agent. Was it Agent Smith in the in the Matrix when he was interrogating Morpheus, and he said, "I've got to get out of here." He hated where he was, and it sure sounds like maybe he was an archon, and it was demonstrated in the movie The Matrix. What do you think about that? I mean, he wanted to get out; he couldn't stand it.
That's a good analogy. That is a good analogy, but yeah, he can't get out. He can't. Well, he tried, but he couldn't, and they can't either because they're part of it.
So, are some people a projection of the Matrix program, you think?
Yeah, just like, right, the agents were projections. They didn't have any connection to a human in the Matrix. The humans' consciousness were going into those programmed avatars in the Matrix, right? But the agents had no connection like that. They were completely part of the program. And yes, I believe I've come to understand that recently. It's kind of shocking. Some of the people we look at, well, I mean, even our physical bodies are part of the Matrix.
By the way,
our souls are not.
Okay, yeah. By the way, I think I have the picture that you said that were the entities or whatever that was. It was a screen grab from what you were talking about earlier, what they look like. So I have that in the background now. But so how would we know if somebody? I mean, is it so realistic that we would not be able to tell that they're a projection? How will we be able to tell?
This is a good point. All right, I'm glad you asked this. They are physical, but they're not animated by. They're not connected to a soul. I mean, our souls aren't completely in the body. They're just projected in there. It's like, okay, so here's a good analogy. If you're sitting on a couch and you're playing a video game, you are not the character in the video game, right? But your consciousness is projected into it.
Okay.
And all the other characters, unless you're playing with somebody else, all those other characters are basically avatars with no consciousness. They're just part of the program. But they look real enough, right? They're just as real as your avatar in the simulation. Okay? So this is the analogy I have for where our souls aren't even fully here. They're in a next level up. Just call it level 4. We're in level 3. Our souls are resting in level 4 and participating in this simulation. And the game is called Good and Evil, the video game that we're experiencing here. So naturally, there's all kinds of characters that have been thrown into the mix in order to keep our interests. And it's all competitive, competition-based is what I'm trying to say. So even the characters that are supposedly the bad guys, they're all competing against each other to climb the ladder. And so it's a very seductive game for souls to come and experience it. And we learn things from it that we would never experience outside of the simulation. The problem is some of us have been here for far too long. You know, we see this in people that play video games too much. Their life starts to suffer, their health starts to fail because they're so sucked into it, and because in their mind, in their body, they're feeling it as though, you know, they're so connected. They're too connected to it that they're disconnected from this world. So that is a problem, and hopefully that can be. I know it's changing. I guarantee you. More and more people are waking up. You know why? Because things are falling apart. The simulation is crapping out, and it's alarming people to the point that they're like waking up.
Well, again, I guess I know the Matrix movie too well, and that you just reminded me of the scene where Neo's going up the stairs and he looks and sees that cat, and he looks back and that cat does the same more. So is this the sort of error in the Matrix that these types of things that people can start to see as things fall apart, that they'll see more sort of bizarre changes, maybe even some Mandela effect type of things?
Right. I mean, they can only exert so much control. And I mean, because one of the foundational things about the human soul is it's based on free will. It has to be able to make choices. So if we're constantly being lied to, they can only do that for so long. And so there is a finite amount of lies that they can tell us before people go, wait a second. I mean, this is one of the reasons why they constantly erase our memory every time we die and are reincarnated, recycled back into the system. This is all done under subterfuge. It's on a false pretense. You know, hey, you haven't finished the game. You know, get on back in there. You know, we'll give you a new avatar. Just forget about, you know, it's like, you know, it's sort of like in a video game. You just like, oh, click a button, you got a new life. Boom, you're still in the game.
Hey,
you're still playing.
Got a question somebody wrote out in the live chat. Says, and I have the title of your website, unicasmagazine.com. They want to know what unicus means.
Oh, it's Latin. It means unique.
Okay.
One of a kind.
All right. And I've got it up here in this other computer, and all sorts of interesting titles: The Death Trap and How to Avoid It, Insightful Interview, Technocide, I like that one, Digital Deception in the Pacific Metholithic Monuments of Malibu, and the Malibu Chronicles. I've got some of those screen grabs on that, Exposing Earth's Covert Controllers, the Archons.
That's the one.
They're the Archons, are they like can they be like body snatchers and supplant a human with them, an exact copy?
I mean, well, they are making clones and androids, but they can take control of a person. And that was the interesting thing to me about the Matrix, how the agents could literally move into anybody's avatar. I don't know where that humans, relatively speaking, where in the Matrix where that humans' consciousness would go when they were hijacked by the agent. But it's sort of, I mean, I know that's what possession is. I've seen it. I know those are only extreme cases, but I also know that according to the Catholic Church, these kind of incidences of possession are allegedly on the rise, and they've been trying to train more and more exorcists, and they even did, I think last year or so, they did an exorcist for the entire country of Mexico because things are so out of control there.
All right, Robert, this is a question from our moderator, Jade, out of the live chat. What do you think they are doing at CERN?
Well, they're trying to open a huge portal out into the next level, and I really don't think that's gonna work. But they do a lot of crazy things. I mean, like I said, there's a script they are following here, by the way, that they wrote. The good and evil game. It's like every game has to have, or every movie has to have a beginning, middle, and end. And because it's good and evil, if you follow the Hollywood hero type of happy ending, they're going to script out a happy ending. So they got to make things pretty bad before the cavalry comes over the hill and then go, hey, we're here to save you. And then actually it's the same guy that did the whole, made the mess in the first place. And the reason they're doing that is because they know that every time that they do this, come up to the end of the movie, a lot of people want to get up and leave the theater. And the way they do this is very seductive. As I said, they're like, well, hey, we're here to save you. Don't you want to see what happens next? Right? 1,000 years apiece. Sounds good, right? Well, depends who's running the show. So, and especially if it's a loop, if they're going to loop us back in, no, thank you. I don't want to. I'm done. Actually, this is it for me.
A couple of years ago, it seems that there was some sort of internet craze where I guess kids, you talk about, staying in their basement and being on the internet. They were able to say, I think they said they were able to create creatures that literally came out of the internet. Are you familiar with that?
No, I wouldn't be surprised though, because this is what I was saying before about consciousness. We have to be careful about what we think. I mean, everything is based on waves of consciousness. So it doesn't surprise me that these things happen. But once you go down that road, opening a portal or start conjuring up entities like Aleister Crowley did, and what was his name? Jack Parsons. It's a very dangerous thing. It really is. I mean, it may start off as a curiosity, or maybe you're just somebody seeking like fame and fortune. That happens all the time. But it usually ends up being a very bad idea.
Somebody wrote in and said it's the tulpamancers that create the tulpas. So that definitely sounds like what's going on. It is some freaky stuff out there. But Robert, as you said you've been attacked. Now, since then, you've gone on a quest for truth and researched mysteries and various things. But have you been attacked since then, or have you sort of elevated in your knowledge of life? I mean, where are you now?
I'm okay now. I've learned not to provoke them, and I've also learned, like any other fighter, you you can't be punching the entire time. You have to be, defensive as well as offensive. So I pick my battles very carefully. But no, I don't provoke them anymore. There was a time when I was, specifically 2012, I was producing my own radio show, and I was pretty agitated, like most people, and I was learning a lot. And I got very righteous, and I I started basically provoking them, and it was bad. It was pretty bad. And so I learned from my mistakes, is what I'm trying to tell you. There's certain areas they really don't want people going into, and so it's like touching fire. You don't. How many times you got to do that before you stop, right? But I am not afraid of them. I don't hate them either. I recognize who they are and what they're doing. Ultimately, I have come to understand that this simulation, as screwed up as it appears to be, is actually serving a purpose for our souls. Those of us who are souls are actually learning like a higher level of being. So here, I'll give you an example, because I know that's confusing if I just don't put it into the context. So in this world that's ruled by law unto death, punishable unto death, people are rewarded for following the rules and from the top down. So naturally, but if you don't follow the rules, you're punished. Actually, even if you follow the rules, at some point you're punished. But we have the option. We have free will. So we can, of our own choosing, we can be of service. Rather than being forced to serve, we can choose to serve others. And in doing so, it's actually good. We call them good deeds, right? But I look at it this way: if the soul is a seed of light or a spark,
okay,
when you blow on an ember, you know what happens? It glows brighter, right?
He's hotter.
Yes. It's the light it's light, heat, same thing. It's a way of feeding our soul by being kind and calm and creative, passionate. These are things when we choose to help other people and be of service from our own choosing. It does that for our soul. And those things are never lost. Even though where we are now is basically a virtual reality that's an illusion, something is coming out of it. We're learning, we're honing skills and gaining experiences that, like I said before, we would never have if we didn't come here.
All right, for those of you just joining the program, we have on our News America line all the way from Hong Kong, Robert Stanley from unicasmagazine.com. If you have a question for tonight's guest, you can put it in the live chat or click on the Fast Blast link on the left side of the website. Robert, if someone doesn't have a soul, and now you said you said you learned to provoke them. Now me, I'm a cowboy. I'm a little bit reckless. I'm gonna see one of these Archon dudes. I'm gonna smack him or something. You say that you try not to antagonize them. Well, that's my nature is to antagonize them. But if I did, and I suspected somebody to be one of these creatures, one of these soulless creatures, how would they manifest? Could I get them to manifest? Or show their true colors and their true intentions? It's only
the only reason I saw them, because they're not really fully here. They're in like the fourth dimension or the fourth level, whatever. I was seeing into the next level because I was in an altered state of consciousness. I don't know if you want to do that or not, but when you do see people here like that, that are soulless, we call them psychopaths, narcissists. They are absolutely like dead inside. You can see it in their eyes. And this does not mean that we should go around judging other people, trying to root them out because this is their domain. We're just visiting. But you got to watch them. It's like when you're walking through the field, you're looking for snakes, right? Well, guess what? That's their home. So, but you're still looking out. You don't want to get bit. And that's how they are. They're dangerous. But they're very limited too. I mean, they'd love to make us think that they're omnipotent and they're controlling on all us and there's no way out and all that crap. It just isn't true. They're the ones that are stuck here. There's no way out for them. So, so humans that have a soul, we're told that you can see it through their eyes. That's the window to their soul. You can also feel it. If you are a soul here, as I am, I feel it. And for growing up, I mean, like I said, I'm 57. I'm going to be 58 soon. I always assumed everybody who had a soul and everybody was the same and they saw the same stuff. And I've, learned the hard way that isn't the case. But if you provoke them, if you really feel that you want to retaliate, then you're giving them license to attack you. And let me tell you something. They know exactly what we're thinking all the time. They're watching us all the time.
Whoa.
We don't have any privacy. And so if you think you have an advantage over them because you're stronger or got a gun or whatever, okay, even there's a lot of different things we wrongly assume that we have an upper hand and we don't, not in their domain. Okay, but once we are on a spiritual level, they can't touch us at all. They know it, and that freaks them out. And again, that's one of the reasons that they lie to us all the time, why they have to keep us constantly divided and conquered and distracted and confused, because otherwise, game over. We would just. It's not even winning. Okay, there's nothing to win. It's just an experience, and this is the thing about why the Gnostics, what it really means. Gnosis, it's spelled with a G. Gnosis means a knowing through experience. It's not an intellectual exercise. It's not a theory. It's an experience. So, there's a difference.
Well, Robert, straighten something out for me, because earlier you said that they're operating on level 4, but earlier you said that our souls are resting in level 4.
That's a problem. Yeah, it is. That's why they can. This is why, from Islamic perspective, they say these entities they call the jinn. There's at least one of them assigned to us at birth, and that they have the ability to whisper into the souls of men. So that's in a non-physical level. Our souls are not physical, so they're just there's just a small portion of the soul is projected here into this virtual reality. Okay, and this is the problem. When we exit when we withdraw from the physical body that we think is us here, our soul is still in the 4th level, and they are in the 4th level, and they can easily trick people into coming back into this 3rd level, the simulation. So they control the 3rd level, but they don't have nearly as much control in the 4th, and on the 5th, they don't even exist there. They can't go there. They're stuck in the 4th and the 3rd, and I hesitate to even tell people, but there's something lower than the 3rd, and that's what most of us would think of as hell, in the sense that for a conscious being, like I was telling you before about the depths of the ocean, you know what happens? The deeper you go, the colder, the darker, and the more pressure, like crushing pressure. So it's like that. Of course, it's everybody's open to interpretation, but that's the best analogy I can give. And the only reason a person or a soul would ever go there is because they made some really screwed up choices. Mostly, people do that. The souls do that because they believe the lie. And that was one of the big lessons about the movies, The Matrix, is that they were showing us that the belief has pretty much everything to do with it, the outcome, right? If you don't believe it, you're not going to achieve it, and you probably wouldn't perceive it either. I mean, it's like, right? We can be blinded by our own ego, or defeated by it.
Okay, let's get a question there from Billy Strasser out of the live chat. Is it the archons that attack us in sleep paralysis, or do they cause it?
Yes. Yeah, and it's called the incubus or the succubus. Yeah, the thing is that it isn't just the mental parasites. There's these, like I said, there's these other entities that are, the way they present themselves is, we call it shape-shifting, but I don't know. It's like, okay, here's an example. Okay. Our souls don't look like human beings, and yet when they can inhabit the physical body, but that's not your soul. Your soul looks like it's on my website at the bottom of the page there. Okay. It's I call it a seed of light. It's like a luminous, radiant, egg-shaped plasma, I guess is the way we would call this, and it's self-aware. But these beings, they essentially can take whatever form, especially in the 4th dimension. They can. It's really kind of tricky. So when we're there, they will oftentimes mimic, or they copycat. So, for example, I'll give you an example. Okay. One day, my wife had some surgery, and she was recovering, and I was sleeping in the other room, so I didn't wake her. But I was listening out. I had the door cracked open, right? And I'm listening in case she needed anything. And I knew she was. When I left her, I thought she was asleep. Okay. But it was nighttime, and I was not asleep. I was kind of just resting, laying there in the dark, and I heard her voice calling me. So naturally, I get up and I go and check on her. Well, guess what? She's asleep. Well, okay. Now that was a big mistake. They shouldn't have done that because, I mean, it definitely riled me up. because I was concerned, and I guess they got a kick out of it or whatever. For whatever reason, some of them decided they could do, and they can do that. They can imitate voices that we recognize, and that's really dangerous if you think about it, right? Especially when we cross over, so allegedly physically die, and there you are greeted by your grandmother going, "Hey, there's this wonderful family down there that's just waiting for you. Wouldn't you like to go? Wouldn't you like to go back down there?" So it's not your grandmother, It's like,
no doubt,
these guys are really good at acting or imitating.
Sounds like a damn archon. All right, hey, listen, Robert. Right at the top of the hour, we take about a 5-minute break here.
Sure.
I've got your website in our background there. What can people find there if they go there?
A lot of free information, books, articles, radio shows, photographs. It's a lot of good stuff. Feel free. I hope you enjoy it.
Okay. All right, just stay on the line. We're going to turn you down. We'll be back with you in 5 minutes. Okay,
great.
All right, everybody. You're watching and or listening to the Edge television broadcast on our Newsmaker line all the way from Hong Kong. It is Robert Stanley of unicasmagazine.com. We're going to take a 5-minute break. And welcome back to the Edge television broadcast. My name is Daniel Lott. If you miss any of this exciting broadcast, it will begin to replay in our main player directly after the show. Additionally, we'll put it up in our YouTube channel. We'll podcast it and put it into our TuneIn Radio playlist. Our TuneIn Radio channel plays 24 hours a day, all of our archived shows, show after show, and you can listen across any platform, any device. That's our TuneIn Radio program. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as well, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Now let's go back to our Newsmaker line all the way from Hong Kong. Robert Stanley of unicasmagazine.com. Robert, welcome back.
Thank you, Daniel.
Wow, man. Robert, I don't really have a use for these things that's interfering with our consciousness or thoughts or any other thing. But how is it that these archon creatures, entities, can control our thoughts, and how can we stop them?
Okay, that's a good question. We can, well, first of all, we have to believe that they exist. That's one of the reasons. Okay, this is pretty common knowledge, right? The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing us he doesn't exist. Right? If you believe that, when a person believes that there is no demons, there is no Lucifer, then they're vulnerable. It's like leaving your house going, well, there's nobody going to rob it, so I just want to lock it up, right? And it's it's kind of like that. Our consciousness is sovereign, but we have to defend it when we're here because, like I said, it's all about competition, and the game here is good and evil. So you got to have the good guys and the bad guys fighting it out. There's no end to it. That's why I said nobody really wins. The damn thing keeps running over and over and over again. Because if you notice, every time we snuff out one dictator, another one pops up, right?
Right.
Like whack-a-mole. It's crazy. And I mean, it really is crazy.
That's one of my favorite games right there too. I'd like to change that. I'd like to change that to Whack-a-Demon.
I know people, and this is the thing. They actually want you to attack them because then you give them permission to really lay into you and your family. Everybody around you, they'll make your life miserable, and they won't. That's their whole entire job, basically. For here, that's their programming is to do that.
So can we win a battle against them?
Not here. I mean, yeah, you can, but you're never going to win the war. You see, it's just going to keep going on and on and on, and that's what the simulation here is all about. And they like us to believe that if we just fight a little bit harder next time, right? We just have a little bit bigger guns or better weapons or whatever, we're going to win this next time. It doesn't happen because they've got the upper hand. That's their domain. They set up the rules, and they have a much better network. Even though they don't have an integrity with themselves, I mean, they've done a really masterful job at breaking us up and dividing us and conquering us or keeping us under control that way through religion and politics, etc.
There is, as we said in the first hour, the division, and then really we can say here the internal turmoil of America, but we could also say country against country as well. Absolutely, through what they call financial warfare, economic warfare. That goes on.
But obviously the religion is the most toxic, right? Well, and that's what's divided the entire planet.
Yeah. Well, I'm not seeing religion enter into the sort of the racial component of here in the United States. Neither am I seeing the religious component being between North Korea and the United States. But I can't say this now. When I see Kim Jong-un or whatever his name is,
yep.
I want, because he's got the nukes, so I want to hate him, but I can't because that haircut keeps making me laugh. So I'm trying to hate him, but I'm thinking, man, how can I get a haircut like that? So in that case there, am I defeating the Archons by wishing I had a haircut like him, and therefore I cannot hate him? What do you think?
Well, as they say that, okay, they have the ability to be good and evil. And ultimately, you got to understand, Lucifer is, he is a soul. He's not the program. He helped create the program and administrate it through artificial intelligence, but he's not that. He's a soul. So even though he screwed up, he does have a kind of a weird sense of humor, I must say. And I mean, because this is on some level, it's a form of entertainment to him. It's one of the reasons he put it together. It's amusing his ego, being worshipped and being able to pull our strings. And in a way, okay, and the rest of the Archons, like you said, they don't just hate us, they envy us. So when they can pull stunts like that, whatever it is, all right. I mean, it's so weird because it's obvious it's repeating itself constantly. So I get what you're saying. Yeah, sure. If you laugh at them, and I have. Okay. Oh God, one time I did. I was laughing I was in an acupuncture session, and I was explaining to the therapist what was going on, some things, some realizations, and so she sticks me with all these needles and this very peaceful deal. Suddenly, I hear this voice talking to me, and I started chuckling, and it said, "What's so funny?" I said, "You are. Wow. You're not going to win. You can't get out. You're stuck here, and I'm not, and you're not. You basically you lose." And there was something about that just made me laugh and laugh and laugh, and I couldn't stop laughing, and it felt good for me, but I tell you, they backed off in a hurry on that. What are they going to do with that?
Wow.
Right?
Well, I don't know, but I mean, I wouldn't have any problem laughing at them.
Well, yeah. It's not just to provoke them. It was really genuinely funny when I could see it. Their little game, like, the boogeyman. Hey, guess what? You trying to scare me, and then it wasn't scary at all. It was just silly. And I realized, you guys have to hide. You're constantly having to hide from us and pull strings from behind the scenes. And like it was so transparent to me at that point. This was, I don't know, like 5 years ago or something. And they're definitely okay. So this is the other thing that we see happening. The reason things are becoming more people are acting more desperate is because the system is falling apart, and they know it. They know that a lot of us are going to leave.
How can Robert? Let me ask you: when the system falls apart, the controllers won't be able to control people.
That's what I'm saying. Well, first of all, they want chaos because out of chaos comes a new order. They instigate that stuff. It's, again, good cop, bad cop, right? So it's called. Problem, reaction, solution is the way new buzz term, but it's actually an old thing. It's called the Hegelian doctrine. You get people to look left, you get people to look right, and then you offer a solution somewhere in the middle, and now you've just basically like herding sheep. You get them to go places using that technique. But the bottom line is that they know that a lot of us are getting ready to leave. Whoa. And so it freaks them out. It freaks them out. So they become increasingly desperate, and they act out of desperation. They do stupid things, and the more they do that, the more it wakes more people up. It's kind of a weird. I would call it an unintended consequences, but they can't help themselves. Oh. Like I said, there is no plan B. They're stuck.
Robert, who's leaving and where are they going?
Home. Some of the souls are going to choose to leave because they're going to realize who they are, where they are, how they got here, and that the fact that this isn't really where they belong. Mm-hmm. This was just a place they chose to be temporarily in a virtual level. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's happening.
Is any of this what you're saying in a projected future written or engraved in monuments or stone tablets or hieroglyphs, anything like that?
Yeah, but most of that stuff was destroyed or hidden specifically by the Catholic Church. So, there's a series of books that were sent to me recently by a gentleman in the United States, and I consider them to be very enlightening, insightful, helpful. And it's called the Divine Secret Garden series, and you can access that through my website in my library. That's a section I kind of forgot there. It's pretty important. The library, it's a free library. Mm-hmm. Go in there, and there's a lot of free books that I find to be very helpful if you want to know. I mean, because then I'm basically trying to encapsulate or summarize what's going on. If you really want more detail, you need to go into the library and read some of those books. And specifically the Divine Secret Garden series is something that was given to me recently, and it elevated my understanding of the current situation.
Yeah, Robert, for some, that kind of going home type thing from a Christian standpoint, they believe that there's a rapture type of situation.
Yes, I know.
What's your view on that?
Well, the physical body's not going anywhere because it's part of the matrix. Mm-hmm. So the soul can leave any time. It's just very difficult. And the thing is, again, if you believe the lies enough, what'll happen is it makes it very difficult to leave. Again, this is another reason we're constantly being distracted, because if we're thinking about paying the bills and other things like that, we can't focus on. Well, look, from a Christian perspective, we were told that the kingdom of heaven is within. What that means is the portal back home is from our soul to back to that other domain is by going within. And if you notice, everything about this society is external, right? We're always looking for somebody to give us the answer or entertain us externally. So we're being badly distracted, and it makes it difficult, if not impossible, for most of us to go within.
There's in the Christian Bible, I think it's written that I think it says, "Know ye not, ye shall judge angels." And I asked you earlier, did we have power over these beings or entities? It seems there that if we are able to be in a place where we can judge them for what, and it doesn't sound like they're good guys that we would be able to judge. Wouldn't that also mean we have power over them?
Yeah, well, but okay. So first thing is recognizing that they are real, and that they created this simulation, and they attracted us to come in. Mm-hmm. See, because once you start recognizing that, it's not so much you have power over them; it's recognizing that they really don't have any power over us. Mm-hmm. Because what's the point of trying to control them? Most of them aren't even real. So the bottom line is learning, as I said before, making good choices based on the other thing about what I said before about going within, that's where our internal guidance system is. Mm-hmm. And that's where we should be not judging, but it's like a compass, it shows us it's like having a conscience, right? You can feel when something's good or bad or right or wrong. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be told that, but that's only for people that have a soul or are a soul that are here. The rest of these beings apparently don't have that internal guidance.
Well, again, that goes back to what we talked about in the first hour. How can we identify somebody whose soul has been supplanted by these things? Typically, they seem to be totally insensitive, callous. Right. And there's a whole lot of people that I would say in this country that fit that description, man. So, I mean, how many souls have been stolen? It seemed like quite a bit.
Okay, so the soulless ones that walk among us in the simulation, they're just being generated. It's not like it's not as though that there was someone connected to a soul connected to a body that was somehow snatched up or kicked out like that. Mm-hmm. They are putting more characters in the game sort of like the end of the Matrix. You know how Agent Smith was duplicating himself over and over again through by hijacking other people. But it's more like this. They're generating more soulless people right now in the simulation to make things even more difficult for us to navigate and to deal with. So that's a problem.
I have in my background now, I think it's from your website, a soul burst. What is that, and where's it come from? Where's it going?
I made that in Photoshop just as a graphic representation of what a soul or a seed of light looks like, based on what I've seen. That's as close as I could get. And it's this. My understanding at this point, after reading The Divine Secret Garden, is this this soul is really only part of who our total being. So it is residing in the fourth dimension. It's sort of like a drone sent out. So from the fifth level, that's where our spirit would be, and it sends out these sparks of light, or what we would consider to be souls, to experience various things and then come back. And the problem is when we get stuck in a place like this, then others have to come in and offer assistance.
Let me ask something. Is this the spark of life when a sperm impregnates a cell? Is that where the spark of life comes from?
The
egg, when the sperm goes into an egg?
There is something, yes. But here you raised a good point, because I forgot about this before. So what is animating the soulless beings, right? And that is an AI network. See, the rest of us, those of us who are souls, are connected to a web of light, and throughout creation, all of creation, the real creation. Here in the simulation, it is. It's way better or more advanced than the internet is, but it is still an artificial construct, and it controls those entities, all of them, the programs. I mean, just like in a video game, right? There's rules. They're animated by the rules to follow the rules and to serve the simulation. So there's the big difference. This is why we say we have two different consciousnesses in our body, the subconscious and the regular consciousness. There's a difference there. But some people are just on automatic. I mean, because like I said, they're bodies. They don't have a soul connection.
All right, we have this question from Philip out of Georgia. It says, Robert, what is the most evil place you've ever visited, and do you believe that the archons would reside there?
Well, yeah, because I grew up there, and I know that's weird because Malibu is it looks so idyllic, and you'd think, well, why would people go there, especially these rich and famous people and their mansions and whatnot. But I saved 3 people's lives when I was there, but I knew personally 9 people that killed themselves there.
Yikes!
Which is a lot of people for a small town. Let me tell you, small town. Okay, I'm a small town guy. I was raised, and I mean, seriously, you would have loved it. There was people riding horses, and
there you go.
Yeah, it was good stuff.
I'll get a horse out there. So, are you saying that Malibu then?
Yeah.
Okay, I got a picture grab from your website there of the methylitic monuments of Malibu.
Megalithic, yeah.
Megalithic, yeah. There it is. I mean, so what about this? The second one I'm looking at is it almost looks like Kim Jong-un right there without the hair. But what is that? What's going on here with these comparisons?
Yeah, so after I had that experience up in the mountains that night in September of 1985, I went back. I was looking for another contact or confirmation or some more. I wanted to ask that entity some questions. So when I went back up there, what I found were what you're looking at and those things are huge, by the way.
Okay.
Those are very large statues, stone statues, monuments of the gods. And the gods of our ancestors are the archons. Like I said, they can take all kinds of different features, but they're always wanting us to basically worship them. So, yeah, I went up there and I saw this first thing, that Sphinx-looking face, the cat-like face in profile, and that just floored me. And so I kept going up there. And as I did, I found that there was a series of these statues there. And when I go there at night for a number of years, I was having close encounters with these UFOs, entities, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. Well, it looks like they've sort of copies of other places, though. So is that saying that they've been whatever created them on the other side of the world, we're over here doing the same thing?
Yep. Yeah. It's when I say it's their domain, I mean the whole simulation. It's like, yeah, this is what they do to us, though. They want us to see things in a very fragmented fashion.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Instead of looking at things holistically. That's what I told you before. It's kind of hard to do, but I've trained myself to see things that way. Okay. And it in other words, that's the only way you can see the bigger picture, right? Mm-hmm. You can't exclude anything. You have to look at it all, and then draw some sort of analysis through comparison.
Mm-hmm. All right. Here's a great question. It says, "Can the archons breed?"
Yeah. Actually, oh God. Actually, they do. Yeah. Well, I mean, if they're just part of the program.
Let's get a little graphic there, man. How they do it?
This is not cool. All right. So a lot of people have wondered why so much abuse of children, and it isn't just for sexual gratification. It is the way that they breed those themselves, perpetuate. It's in other words, we know sexual diseases can be passed through sexual contact, but these entities are not physical. So, but when you're having sex, there's more than just a physical contact. There's an energetic exchange, and so these beings are literally passed on. And this is one of the reasons they target children, is because they become the host. They become infected, and that's how they perpetuate it. They use us in that regard. They're basically piggybacking on us on some level.
Well, I must have misunderstood you. Did you just say that they impregnate children?
No. What I'm saying is when an adult who's infected by the archons, who is basically demon possessed, when they abuse a child, typically that child becomes infected. Some of those parasites will go then into that child on some level, on a non-physical level. They become part of that child, who naturally is going to grow up, and probably this is one of the reasons they'll go on to abuse others.
Wow. Well, we definitely got to stop that. They say on the back of milk car, there's so many missing children in the United States. Where are these children going? Are the archons snatching them?
Okay, so one of the early researchers into this was a guy named Charles Fort, and he made a statement at some point. He said that we appear to be somebody's property, and on a physical level, that is true. When we agree to participate in their game, in their domain, our body is basically theirs. Our soul is not, clearly. There's a difference.
All right. Here's a great question came in the live chat. It said, who is writing the program?
You mean originally, as far as I know, it was Lucifer.
When you say Lucifer, that sort of has a sort of a Christian connotation to it.
Yes.
A lot of writings about Lucifer, being the angel of light, and various things. So, along with that, then you said that level 3 was virtual hell. So what about level 2? Does it get worse?
No, that's even lower. That would, from our perspective here, that would be considered hell.
Oh, level 1? Number 1.
I don't even want to think about it.
Number
okay.
1?
That would be pretty, I guess that would be like the bottomless pit. Beyond just
worse than hell?
Damnation. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, there's levels. It's like there's levels to everything else. We're talking about, like I said, if it's the ocean, how deep can you go? And it just gets colder, darker, more dense. And it's a choice, though. See, it's not punishment from God Almighty. It's a choice that we make individually. And why would anybody do that, Daniel? It's because they've been lied to. That they make these choices based on false information, lies. This is the thing. This is why I call him the father of lies.
Mm-hmm.
He's the father of the archons. He's the architect. He's in the Matrix. Mm-hmm. He was the father of the Matrix. That clown in the white suit that Neo confronts, that would be Lucifer, or an extension of him. As projected in the AI form.
Okay. All right. A question came in. It says, and there's a lot of conversation going on about something's happening in Antarctica. A lot of people are supposedly going down there to visit. The question came in: are the Archons imprisoned in Antarctica?
Not that I know of. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe that's part of the program, but I who knows? Mm-hmm. Again, we're talking. It's very interesting how rumors run rampant on the internet. Mm-hmm. And I guess it's entertaining, but we can't tell. It's off limits. Good luck trying to get down there. You know how expensive it is to travel down there, not to mention it'd kill you, just the cold will kill you.
Mm-hmm. Now you're in Hong Kong, so were you trying to get as far away from Malibu, California as you possibly could?
No, it was just an opportunity for work. But, the thing is, having, like I told you, growing up as a teenager, spending 3 years traveling around at least a good portion of the planet, even though Malibu was beautiful, I recognized that there was a lot of other places in the world to live. Mm-hmm. And that part of me always wanted to do that. So when the opportunity came up, I mean, it's not that simple to just get up and go. Leave America after you're born and raised there, family, friends. Mm-hmm. It's very expensive. You can't just do that on a whim. So, but I was always keeping an eye towards the opportunity. So when it came up, my family and I, we moved. Mm-hmm. And we've been here for almost 3 years, and it's safer, but it's still part of the simulation. So I don't think. In other words, to answer your question, I don't think there's any place you can get away from it. However, I would not go back to Malibu. There's no reason for me to do that. And knowing what I know now, I basically would caution anybody to even vacation there for too long. It's dangerous.
The people in Hong Kong, do you talk to them about these subjects?
No, well, some of them actually I have. What's weird is some of the people here hear me on the radio shows, wow. and they live here. They go, whoa, this guy lives in Hong Kong. So I've had a few of them contact me, and we've met and sat down, had coffee, and just talked about things, and not a lot, just a few. Mm-hmm. But normally, in the village I'm in right now, I typically don't like to. What would be the point? Most of these people don't care, and it's not just here. That's how it is in the world. Although that's changing. That has changed a lot. I've been doing this for a while, and I noticed, especially from the feedback I get from people through emails after doing shows like this, I can tell you that the consciousness has changed. It's shifted dramatically. More people are awake and aware, and they want answers. They want real answers, not just more
now
theory.
Now that's interesting you say that, and again, I'm going to go back to current events here in the United States. Virtually overnight, statues became a horrible. You use the word infected, an infection, a horrible infection, and for the last 8 years. They were great. They were fine. Nobody had a problem. Right. And then all of a sudden in 2016, I guess somewhere around February 20th, all of a sudden, it's the worst thing ever. But even, and just to say that those statues and monuments instantly overnight became an anathema. It became instantly hated like that. So when you say about a conscious shift right there, while it's kind of a weird political thing, but it's instant. That was an instant shift overnight. Now people are saying, well, gee, we're going to have to change the state of Washington's name. Right. We're going to have to kick George Washington out of change the name of Washington D.C. Now you can't drink out of Dixie cups. I mean, it's Christopher Columbus. Now he's got to go. I mean, so there's then you have Dolly Parton's Dixie Stampede. That thing's been going on for 32 years now. That's the epitome of racism. So you're talking about a conscious shift that it can happen just that fast. But I want to connect the statues then to monoliths, because there are some say there are monoliths on Mars, and are these the same people that built them here? Sure.
Actually, if you go to my article section and you click on digital deception in the Pacific, the first page is about things that go, strange things under the water in the Pacific. But using Google Earth, I was able to see things on Mars that are clearly constructed. I mean, not like a question at all. It's obvious. These are massive doorways leading into the interior to below the surface, and as seen from space. And then the next two pages is about the moon and Mars, but specifically the same thing that I saw on Google Earth on the moon, or excuse me, on the Mars, was on the moon and more. So yeah, it's like I said, whoever created the simulation, they run the whole damn thing. All the way through. It's they're yeah, the thing is, it's very predictable. There's they can't really create anything new. They're constantly copying even things that they've done before. They just keep repeating the same patterning.
Well, if they keep repeating the same pattern, wouldn't that enable us to deal with it before it happens?
You would think, but what happens is when we pass over and come back in another life, so-called, right? Different body, different family. We are forced to forget, and or I should say, we agree to forgetting, and that makes it much harder to understand where we are and what we're doing.
Now that kind of reminds me of going to a sort of a permission-based existence, to where we give permission for things to operate in our life. If that's the case, can't we just simply revoke permission, whether we've given it willingly or inadvertently or knowingly? Yeah,
but we have to know it.
And then who would we address to revoke that permission that we may have been given?
Well, you don't need to talk to them to do this. You have to talk to yourself and your reconnect. This is what I said about the kingdom being within, going within, having faith that you are connected to a whole entirely different family tree. Okay, and so as I say, this series of books really helped me understand this better. But to answer your question, we have a connectivity that has been broken. Most of us are not connected to. We're so focused to being connected to the matrix, we've forgotten how to reconnect to our soul self, the garden that we came from, our true family, the divine ones. So it's not even about asking them permission. It's just saying, hey, I'm ready to come home. I miss you guys. I love you. I want to come home. And that's really what it. Okay, here's a terrible analogy.
Right.
Remember Wizard of Oz?
Okay.
How did she get out of there? There's no place like home.
Well, she took a balloon ride, right? She clicked her heels.
No,
she didn't get on the balloon.
Yeah, but see, it's not really magic. It's a technique. It's a belief. She believed that the ruby slippers were going to do it for her, but she still had to focus on something, and she was focusing on home. So you could say, in that regard, she was going within. And in fact, we find out when she wakes up in bed, and you say, "Oh my God, it was just a dream." Well, in some regards, when we do wake up on a soul level, it does feel like it was just a dream.
So
being here.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
go ahead.
So then what we focus on is what we get.
Exactly. I mean, think about it. In anything in life, okay? You can't even walk without focusing.
So what do you focus on, Robert?
Well, it's evolved, my understanding of this. I mean, after that event in 1985, when I was attacked and confronted like that, and it was so alarming, it woke me up. It shattered my false belief. I realized that something was wrong, so I was been really intently, passionately seeking some sort of answer or answers, and it wasn't easy, and I did get help along the way. So I'm trying to tell you that my understanding of it has evolved, and only recently I read a lot, and I talk to people like yourself, and I get a lot of email. But more than anything, I do a lot of soul searching. I have to filter it through my personal consciousness. And at this point, as I say, what I'm telling you is what that's the latest level of understanding. is that we are in this simulation, and this is not our home.
Well, I'm sure you're aware, maybe you're not, but a lot of people seem to claim that when you accept Christ as your Savior, that your life changes, and a lot of the answers that people seek seem to just kind of roll out to them, or they have a peace of mind knowing that whether they get the answers verbally or spiritually or mentally, that their life has changed instantly. Have you ever went down that road to see if that happens for you?
Well, of course. And I am not religious. I do not adhere to any religion or politic or philosophy. However, the books that I am mentioning now, The Divine Secret Garden, are all about that. In that, it gives us a more expanded understanding of the difference between the good seed in the garden and the weeds that were planted as well. And knowing the difference. If you recall, he said, I am the way, I'm the truth, I'm the light. So he was showing the way home. He was here to germinate the seeds that were dormant because they'd been in this simulation too long. The conditions weren't right for them to actually, the seeds to germinate. So his word is his word, not the ones that came after they basically kicked him out of here. Right? There's a problem here. Because when you invoke that name, there's the authentic, and then there's the fake. There's the copy. That's like I told you, they can't create things, and they felt very threatened by him coming here and showing us the way home. He represents the tree of life. If we got to go back to the Garden of Eden, he is from the family tree of life. Lucifer created a different branch. His family is the family tree of good and evil. And he seduced us into becoming part of his family in this simulation, which is all about good and evil. All right? And it's all about the law. Whereas the family of the family of the tree of life is all about love and harmony and the things that you think of as a normal, happy, healthy family. Right? So there's a difference. Literally, these things are like polar opposites. And yet what's really odd is Lucifer originally came from the tree of life.
Wow.
I know.
That's interesting. So who is the serpent? Was that an archon?
That's an extension. It's either, depending on which version you look at. I know a lot of people, especially from Christian perspective, they think that Lucifer is also Satan, and that's not untrue. It's just it's a different aspect. It's either one of his children here, or it is an AI version of him playing the what is it? Jesus, in a movie, what is it? The bad guy. There's a name for it. I don't know. I'm blanking out on it.
The alter ego? You're talking about what they call the bad guy in a movie?
Yeah. I'm sorry. There's a name for it. I can't.
The villain?
Yes. Okay. So he's the villain. He is the evil one he's kind of, like I said, it's good and evil. And what that does is it allows Lucifer to pretend like he's the good guy. That's what he was trying to do to me on some level. Didn't work, but that's what he was doing. And he's fooled a lot of people doing that. I don't know. Have you read the work of Zachariah Sitchin?
No, but that topic comes up on this program quite a bit.
I'm sure it does. Well, so, one of the other names for him is Enki. And so he's also known as Loki. If you've watched the movies, The Avengers, that's one of his personas. Okay. He has a lot of different names because he's, but he thinks of himself as the Father and the Savior. So the counterpart to that would be this, the evil one that he defeats. So when he comes back or stages when he comes out of the closet again and says, hey, look, everything's terrible and here I am to save you. A lot of people, a lot of souls even will fall for it again.
Now, again, there's a biblical text for that. This says, if it were possible, the very elect would be deceived. And it sounds like there was an attempt to deceive you, and I'm sure some people are being deceived. But sometimes it just goes down to one side or the other, and both sides claim that the other side is deceived. So how do we know what the truth is, Robert?
Good question, Daniel. All right. This is going back to using the internal compass. If it feels wrong, most likely it is. Everything about religion, especially in the Bible, is designed to confuse us. It's like putting a few drops of poison in water. You need the water to live, right? Okay. But if somebody poisons the water and they don't tell you, and you drink it, it's going to make you really sick, if not kill you. Mm-hmm. So this is what they've done. Again, if people want more in-depth information, especially about the Christian angle to all of this stuff, you really owe it to yourself to read the Divine Secret Garden series. If you do, please start with the first one, because otherwise it won't make as much sense. If you just jump around, like you can't cheat it. You got to go. It's a lesson plan. Okay. And it isn't really religious. That's the other thing. It's
well, I don't think Jesus was religious himself. I think man
actually he wasn't. You're right. That's a good point. That's a very good point. Mm-hmm. He wasn't. No, that was done afterwards in order to distort his message and his purpose.
Mm-hmm. When Jesus walked on water or walked through a wall, was he in level 4 manifesting into the current dimension?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Everything. Okay. Science today knows that. Right. If you raise not only if you raise your frequency, but if you can control. Okay. So solid matter, really, as I told you before, is just energy wave patterning, but it's because it's an infinite number of small little vortices or spirals. Mm-hmm. Now, if you can stop the spin, you could walk through the wall of a solid object. Mm-hmm. And this is not theory. This is science that has been proven now. And they're calling these non-Hertzian waves or terahertz. But they're also figuring this out using reaching into these other dimensions using quantum computers. But that's nothing new. None of this stuff is new.
If you were to stop the spiral, would you be stopping time, and could you go forward or backwards?
Yes. And you really don't want to mess with that, because then you start creating the alternate timelines, and you can get really lost. You can get super lost in all of that stuff. I mean, it's not a good idea. If one were to do that,
Robert Stanley over there in Hong Kong, and author of unicascom, could a person inadvertently end up in another dimension, another universe, and then let's just say, like right now, I'm talking to you through Skype. Maybe it was somebody else with a cowboy hat in Indiana that's talking to you. I mean, would I physically disappear and all history of me be completely gone because now I have been transposed into another dimension, or would two of me exist?
Yes.
Wow. Didn't see that coming. That's cool. Okay.
I heard everything you said, man. I just saying, yes, I agree. That's what would happen as far as I know. We can't prove that, because you can only be right. You can't see, you're not going to meet up with yourself, as far as I can tell. I could be wrong about that, but yeah, there's multiple levels because it's a holographic fractal. I mean, this is the thing about these wave forms. The patterns they take are fractal in nature, and they repeat. So naturally, there's going to be multiples of, and not only multiples of us as we know ourselves, but multiple dimensions of ourselves, as I was describing before.
That reminds me, movie buff an episode of The Twilight Zone where this businessman from, I guess, New York, he ended up in this small town, and he decided to walk in that town. Then all of a sudden he realized that he walked into his past, and he met, did you know, are you familiar with that?
Was that the one with Burgess Meredith?
No, but I'll tell you what, he's been in a lot of them. He was in The Obsolete Man. That was one of...
That was with the glass. Okay, so anyway.
Yeah, so he walks back into this town, and he walks back into his past, and he meets up with himself as a little boy, and he meets his parents. He said, I'm really me. I'm the kid. So now they both existed at the same time. And so he wants to go to tell the boy, say, himself, live life, enjoy yourself and everything. And he tries to catch him on a merry-go-round. Well, he falls off the merry-go-round. The little boy trying to get away from him. He falls off and he breaks his leg. Right. And then it comes out, the father says, you got to go back to your time. You can't steal the time of this little boy. So when he goes back to his car, when he comes back, he's walking with a limp because back in time, he was the one that caused his own accidents so he walked there, but when he came back, he had a limp and then he caused, so he actually met himself in the past and he altered his future.
Yeah. Well, okay. But time as we know it or measure it here is relative. It only really exists here. It's not outside the simulation. Everything is different. It's rather different. I mean, if time doesn't exist like that, but we are, because I told you before, everything is networked. We are getting bleed through. It's possible, and it does happen that other players come from outside and they intervene. Mm-hmm. It's a bit, it's kind of cheating, but the reason they're doing it is only because the circumstances are, like I said, some of us got stuck, and they don't want us to be that way. And they really don't. They want us to keep going, to keep growing, and ultimately to leave, come back into the garden. Mm.
They don't
where we belong. Okay, that's where we belong.
Mm. Well, that I can't quit reminding myself. It reminds me of the song Woodstock. Woodstock didn't say, and we're trying to get back to the garden.
We got to get back to the garden. Right?
Man,
see, that's what I'm saying. Okay, so artists, writers, whatever. A lot of us are being inspired, not knowing what they call it, the muse, right? Mm-hmm. They don't know where. And I've experienced this many times. You can see it in some of my music videos. I don't know where this stuff comes from. It doesn't really matter because sometimes it's just a message. And sometimes it's very manipulative. Obviously, you got to be able to discern: is this more manipulation from within the matrix, or is this something coming from outside through us? Mm-hmm. A connection that is internal. Mm-hmm. You see, there's a difference. There is a really huge difference between what is external and what is internal, and that's part of the process that we have to focus on. It's one of the challenges, I should say, for being here. Is knowing the difference.
Mm-hmm. When you say bleed through, is deja vu or synchronicity bleed through?
It's part of the loop, but I mean, okay, so because think about it, if we've had multiple go rounds here in this simulation, even though that we've had our memory erased on some level, because we are, those of us that are souls, still have a soul memory that's beyond the physical body. So occasionally things do come popping back or popping through. That kind of happened to me a bit with that event in Malibu. I was able to put some pieces together, and it does happen though. I mean, I know that does happen. So I had that feeling when I came up to the mountain after that experience. I went back and I saw that first huge face. Sphinx-like face, I was like, wait a second. That was the most powerful deja vu I've ever had in this life. And because I remembered, I had these dreams of being there, not just as ruins, but when they were still intact and all these other people. And I mean, it's just like, wow. I mean, it unleashed a whole flood of and I thought that stuff was just my imagination as a child growing up, but, no, apparently it's real.
Mm-hmm. Does any of these beliefs and experiences that you had in the research that you do and the books that you read, do any of those conflict with Jesus and his message?
Well, okay. We have to be specific here. I know what you're asking me. There's a difference between what he said was a message for those of us that are souls. However, this was a threat to the simulation, so they had to create a false version. In other words, they planted weeds where he came to germinate the seeds, those of us. Then they had to really poison it by throwing up all these seeds and creating a false version of him. Mm-hmm. So when you're asking me that question, I'm not sure, because there's a conflict in. This is what I'm trying to tell you is the true version of Jesus is not the one that is presented to us through the church. It's unfortunate, but some of the messages are still there, and that's why he spoke in parables, because he knew that his message. Well, he knew he was going to be attacked and kicked out, but he also knew that the words that he spoke, the bread of life that he was giving us as souls, feeding our souls with the truth, showing us the way and showing us his light. He knew that was going to be distorted.
Well, one of those falsified messages I can say right off is if you walk into a church and you see a whole foyer filled with books and tapes and CDs to buy, because it's clear that he wanted no part of people bringing and making some kind of profit selling goods inside the church.
Yes. Okay.
Would that be a false message? Would that fit into that?
Yeah. Yes. He did like that. Okay. Yes. There's a lot of things that were designed afterwards to distort what his message was pretty darn simple, actually, but it wasn't for everybody. So I'm trying to think. There was another analogy, but it's going to skip my mind here.
I know one thing, man. Jesus saves, but Lucifer withdraws, and he sounds like he's trying to withdraw people's souls and their intellect and their love right out of their heart, like you said earlier, like a sort of a parasite. He's always withdrawing the good things within us. As we get near the end there, Robert, how can we prevent? We were talking about how to block the archons and their parasitic ways, and I want to go over that just a little bit more as we end. You said sort of supplant evil thoughts or hate thoughts with be calm, be kind, be creative, be connected individually and collectively. Those all seem like really good ways that we can battle against these damn archons.
Yeah, but it's not okay. From my perspective, it's not a battle. If you even think like that, then you're opening yourself up to engaging with them on that level, competing. There's nothing to compete for here, in my opinion. Okay, the challenge is to do good even in the midst of this good and evil crap. Just choose to do good on your own, as opposed to being forced into being of service. That's part of it. Yes, the things that the attributes or the what do you call it? The being good or kind or calm, creative, all those things are important. But the more important thing that I realized that we need to focus on individually is that if we are a soul here, because I don't think anybody who isn't a soul would even listen to this show or get anything from it. But if you're a soul here, then it's important to go within. And there are, like I said, there's ways that we can get help, but only when we start going in, because the kingdom this kingdom that was right, that he showed us the way to it, has nothing to do with religion. It's about reconnecting with our family. And it means also when you go within, it means you're withdrawing from everything that is external or without. So, right. So this is, it takes focus, and I'm not promoting meditation, whatever the technique is, but you know, part of it is using your imagination, having faith that we are souls, and that we come from this loving family, and that we are welcome to go home anytime that we choose.
Really?
Yeah. I know it's over the top simple, but it's always been that way. It's just the simulation makes it seem really difficult because they don't want us to do it. See, because my understanding at this point is once all the souls leave, the simulation is worthless and it'll end. Because even though he put it together thinking it was going to give him all the glory in his kingdom, he would be the God of that. The truth of the matter is, it's all being permitted by a higher power, and it's all detailed in these books, The Divine Secret Garden. He's a little frustrated by it. I get it. You know, he thought he was going to get his way, and he just ended up being of service to everyone anyway. So it's unintended consequence, man. It's just like, yeah, you thought you were going to be king of the world or whatever, and wow, it's amazing. It's honestly the truth will set you free, but finding it is pretty tough in this world.
It sounds like remarkably like you're saying, walk in the spirit, and then you can be
when he
free.
said, when he told us, be in the world but not of it, that confused me up until just recently. I didn't know what he was talking about. But see, it was encrypted. For those of us who are souls, if you seek long enough, if you knock on the door long enough, it's going to open, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right. So I did, and there you go. It's like that's what that was the real meaning behind it.
And who is the higher power, you think?
Well, when he often talked about the Father, it wasn't Jehovah. It's not that guy. It's not Lucifer, obviously. It's nobody in the simulation. It's his higher power is our true parents, Mother, Father, God, at this highest level of existence.
Okay.
Call it the Holy Spirit. I don't care what you call it, but the bottom line is it's a family thing. Again, if you're talking trees, we know that a forest is a family. They're all connected. They're not individuals. So when I say family, I'm not talking about, a few generations. I'm talking about, man, that reunion is amazing. There's an infinite number of souls in the garden, and it's growing all the time. So that's what we're part of. That is true glory. That is good news to me. I want to go home and be part of that.
Okay. All right. Well, Robert Stanley of unicascom.com, I appreciate you coming on the Edge television broadcast. Can we have you on again sometime?
Yeah, Daniel, it was a pleasure. Really, you're a very, very good host and a good person, and I do appreciate you.
Okay. Well, appreciate you too, man. Stay safe over there and keep up the good
Thanks.
research, and we'll get back with you, Robert. And I really appreciate you staying, getting up early to do this show.
Yeah.
All right.
No problem.
All right. Good evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right.
All right, everybody, that was Robert Stanley all the way from Hong Kong. I believe it's about 8, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning over there. And so we appreciate him coming on the program. Don't forget, next week we're going to have with us back Greg Colson talking about the quantum conundrum. It's going to be a good follow-up to this show here because quantum physics and the D-wave computer are always of interest. And it seems to me they have a lot to do with the supernatural world all around us. So there you go. That's the program for the evening. The program will begin to replay in the main player directly after the show. We'll extract just the interview section with the guest and put it up on our YouTube channel, podcast it, and put it into our TuneIn radio playlist. Daniel Ott for The Edge. Bye-bye.